She never meant to hurt a man. But the moment Lydia Hart opened her eyes that night and felt the warm stickiness of her own blood soaking through her dress at her side, she could not remember how any of it had happened. She only knew one thing: if she stopped moving, something terrible would finally catch up to her. A few hours earlier, she had stepped off the train at Dry Creek with nothing but a hope stitched together from letters, a promised marriage, a new life, a man who claimed he would treat her gently, the chapel bells ringing like a welcome meant for her alone. Lydia believed every word in those letters. She believed she had found the place where her story would finally begin. She was wrong. It began when she found the first lie, a single letter left open on his desk, her name written in a way that made her breath turn cold. She read the words again and again, but the meaning did not change. Someone had plans for her, plans she was never meant to see. The voices came next, men outside the window whispering, arguing, asking if she would fight back, asking if she would scream. The kind of questions that told her everything she needed to know, questions no bride was supposed to hear. Lydia backed away from the window. Her pulse hammered. Her hands shook so badly that the stolen letter almost slipped from her fingers. Maybe they had not noticed her yet. Maybe she still had time. Maybe she could run. She did. She slipped out the back door. Her boots hit the dirt hard. The night tasted like metal. Dust coated her tongue, like swallowing sand. Her lungs burned as she stumbled across the pasture. She did not take food, water, or even her suitcase, only the truth she was never supposed to read. She ran until her legs failed her. Then she fell, face down in the dust of a land she did not recognize. When she finally lifted her head, she saw nothing but a long stretch of wooden fence, a silent ranch, no lights, no voices, only the sound of her own fear echoing in her chest. Lydia dragged herself forward. One breath, one crawl, one prayer at a time. She reached the fence and collapsed again, whispering words she hoped someone might hear. Please. Not him. Not tonight. But the prairie did not answer her. Instead, a man's shadow fell across her body, and a deep voice said from above her, You should not be here. Girl, not at this hour. Lydia froze. It sounded like a warning, and she had no idea if she had just found safety at all or stepped into something far worse. Lydia did not know how long she had been lying there. She only knew the ground felt colder with every breath, and the voice above her sounded too steady for a stranger who had just found a half-conscious woman in the dirt. When she finally forced her eyes open, she saw him, a broad-shouldered man standing in the doorway of a weathered ranch house, framed by the dim glow of a lantern. He stared at her the way men stared at storms they did not trust. He did not ask her name. He did not offer comfort. He just sighed and said, You picked the worst place to fall, girl. Then he walked toward her like he already knew she could not run again. She tried anyways. Her fingers dug into the dirt as she pushed herself back, but her body refused to follow. Pain shot up her side, sharp and hot, and she choked out a breath she wished he had not heard. The man crouched beside her, studying the torn fabric near her hip. Blood soaked through the cloth in a dark circle, a small wound, but angry and long. His eyes narrowed just a little. Then he slid an arm behind her back and lifted her off the ground before she could approach. Her voice cracked. Put me down. He did not. He carried her to the porch like she weighed nothing at all, set her on a wooden bench, and reached for a metal basin filled with water that looked far too cold. Lydia grabbed the edge of the bench, heart pounding. What are you doing? His answer came flat and tired. Keeping you alive. Your wound is small, but it is dirty. His hand brushed the torn fabric, and she flinched so hard that he paused. Then he said the words she remembered for the rest of her life. It is too small to kill you, but patching it will be quick. A graze like this just bites hard. Hold still. She tried to pull away, but his hand pressed her gently but firmly back down. Not cruel. Not careless, just certain. He cleaned the blood with steady movements, and every touch made her breath hitch. She felt the burn of the whiskey he poured, sharp enough to cloud her vision for a moment. Her side throbbed hard, promising she would not be standing tall for a day or two. Fear tightened her chest. Something in his eyes shifted for a moment. Something almost human, but it vanished just as fast. When he finished, he wrapped a thin strip of cloth around her waist. Only then did he step back and really look at her. Dust on her cheeks, fear in her eyes, a letter clutched so tight in her hand that the paper had wrinkled into the shape of her palm. He nodded toward it. "You running from something, girl?" Lydia swallowed hard. If she told the truth, he might throw her back outside. If she lied, she might die before sunrise. So she asked the only question that mattered. "Sir, are you going to give me back to the man who sent me here?" The rancher stared at her a long moment, and the night felt suddenly thinner, because the look in his eyes felt like a warning. And Lydia had no idea what price he was about to ask for saving her life next. Lydia did not answer his question right away. The rancher waited, one eyebrow raised, and like he had all the time in the world. The lantern light flickered across his face, showing lines carved by years of dust and bad memories. She finally whispered, "I cannot go back there." He did not ask why. Instead, he stepped inside his house and returned with a clean cup of water. "Drink this, girl. Your voice sounds like gravel." She took the cup with shaking hands. The first sip burned her throat. The second made her eyes sting with tears she refused to let fall. When she lowered the cup, he was still watching her, not kindly, not cruelly. Like a man deciding whether to keep a stray animal or chase it off his land, he said, "Name is Elias Boone. This ranch is mine. I do not like trouble. I do not invite it in. If you stay, you work. If you lie, you leave. That simple." Lydia stared at him, her fingers tightening around the rim of the cup. She tried to swallow her fear. She tried to believe she could trust a man who talked like a judge and moved like a ghost. But before she could speak, Elias reached forward and lightly tapped the letter she held. "That thing in your hand. It is the truth or it is a lie. Which one is it?" Her breath caught. She opened the folded paper, the same one that had shattered her world only hours before. She did not show him the words, but she said softly, "It is the reason I ran. It is the reason I'm alive, and it is the reason someone might come here looking for me." Elias let out a long, slow exhale. Then he said something that chilled her more than the night air. "Men do not chase brides for love, girl. They chase them for ownership. And men like that do not give up easy." Before Lydia could respond, Elias walked to the edge of the porch and scanned the dark fields. His posture changed. His shoulders squared. His hand drifted near the old revolver hanging by the door. It was the look of a man who had seen danger before. Seen it close. He turned back to her and said, "If trouble comes, it will not knock first. So you tell me now. Are you ready to stay here and fight for your own life? Or are you planning to run again when the wind changes?" Lydia felt her heart rise into her throat because she sensed something in his voice. Not anger, not fear. Something older. Like he knew exactly what kind of trouble was coming. Maybe because he had been it once. And if she had known what Elias Boone truly was before sunrise, she might have run again. Or she might have stayed even closer. Who knows? Before we move on, take a sip of your tea and settle in. Tell me, what time is it where you're listening? Why, and what place are you hearing this story from? For the next 2 days, the ranch felt quiet. Lydia worked in the kitchen, moving carefully as her side still ached. Elias watched her sometimes with the slow, careful attention of someone measuring danger. Every night before sleep, Lydia heard boots on the porch. The boards creaked under his weight. And the wind carried the smell of dry grass and old storms. A scent Lydia was slowly learning to fear as much as he did. Not steps, just a single shift of weight. Like Elias stood there listening to the wind, counting breaths in the dark, waiting for something he did not name. On the third morning, trouble arrived. It came as dust on the road, rising high behind 3 riders. Lydia saw it first. Her breath caught in her throat. That color of dust only came from men who rode hard and fast, men who wanted something, or someone. Elias stepped outside, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. He followed her stare. The muscles in his jaw tightened. He said only one word. Inside. Lydia did not move. She recognized the lead rider before he got close enough for her to see his face. Grant McCready. Her stomach twisted. Everything she had run from was now pacing straight toward her. McCready pulled his horse to a stop in front of the porch. Afternoon. Boone. He said it slow, almost friendly, but his eyes never softened. They slid right past Elias and locked on Lydia like claws. Elias stepped half a foot forward, blocking her from view. You are not welcome here. His voice did not rise, but something in it made McCready's men shift in their saddles. McCready leaned back, pretending to enjoy the breeze. I just came for what is mine. He gestured toward Lydia. The girl. She arrived in my house with a promise. She did not stay long, but that does not change the fact. Lydia felt the words like a slap. She tried to step out from behind Elias, but he held up a hand, stopping her gently. No one owns her. Not anymore. His voice was low, steady, too steady. McCready laughed. Then his laughter died when Elias placed his hand on the old revolver near the porch rail. A thin silence stretched across the yard, the kind that comes before a storm tears something open. One of McCready's men swung down from his horse and grabbed Lydia by the arm. She yelped, startled more than hurt, before she could pull free. Elias moved, fast, faster than any man his age should have. With a quick step forward, Elias slammed the heel of his hand into the man's jaw, a blow sharp enough to drop him to one knee. Not enough to knock him cold. The second man reached for his gun. Lydia did not think. She let out a sharp yell, grabbed a small kitchen knife she had tucked into her apron, and pressed it against the arm holding her. Not deep, just enough to make the man jerk away. The sudden sting broke his stance long enough for Elias to rip the gun from his hand and toss it into the dirt. McCready froze for a moment, recognition flashing in his eyes as if he had finally remembered the name Ellis Boone, the man folks once whispered about when talking of the Black Ridge shootout. McCready's face changed. Boone, Elias Boone from Black Ridge. McCready glared at her. His voice cracked with anger. You think he can protect you forever? Lydia felt the air shift as Elias stepped forward, eyes cold enough to freeze a river. Maybe he can, maybe he cannot. But you should pray you never force him to prove it. McCready jerked his reins and backed his horse away. This is not finished. Not by a long shot. He rode off, his men scrambling behind him. The dust swallowed them, but the danger did not. Lydia looked at Elias, heart racing. He looked back with something she could not read, something dark, something she was not sure she wanted to know, because for the first time, she wondered what kind of man could scare Grant McCready enough to make him run. And what would happen when the rest of Elias Boone's past came riding out of the dark next? For a long moment after McCready rode away, the ranch felt strangely still, the kind of quiet that sits heavy on a man's shoulders. Elias watched the dust fade into the horizon, and then finally turned to Lydia with a look she had not seen before. Not anger, not fear, something closer to regret. And he said, "You did good out there. Most folks freeze when danger breathes down their neck, but you stood your ground." Lydia lowered her eyes, still shaking from the rush. "I only did what I had to do." Elias nodded. That is how a person survives. He fixed the fence she had collapsed near. She brought him water, and every so often, he gave her a quiet look. There was a strange peace between them, not tender, but honest. That night, Lydia sat on the porch steps, staring out at the open fields. The stars were brighter than she remembered. The wind carried the smell of hay in summer. Elias stepped outside and stood beside her. He did not sit until she nodded that he could. He said, "McCready will be back. Men like him always come back." Lydia swallowed hard. Her voice trembled, but her words did not. "Then we will face him when he does." Elias let out a low breath. In that moment, he seemed older, more tired. He finally told her the truth he had been holding, the robberies, the guns, the nights he spent living like a ghost on the run, the people who feared him, the mistakes that kept him awake. Lydia did not look away. She said quietly, "A man is not the sum of what he did. He is the sum of what he chooses next. Elias stared at her, as if no one had ever said such a thing to him. By the end of the week, the morning sky was a pale yellow, and with it, a small group from the nearby town, led by the preacher who had heard about what happened. McCready had been arrested. The letter Lydia found was now evidence. The sheriff did not promise him freedom. Only the chance to speak his truth before a real judge. It was not a clean pardon. It was the kind of mercy a man earned by stepping out of the shadows at last. It was freedom earned. And when the papers were signed, Lydia felt something loosen in her chest. She looked at Elias and saw not the outlaw people whispered about, but the man who had fought for her when no one else would. Weeks later, as the summer wind softened, Lydia found herself back on the porch, sitting close to Elias. The world felt possible again. She asked him, "Do you think people can really change for the better?" Elias answered, "Only if they want something worth changing for." Then he looked at her in a way that made her heart steady itself. "And maybe that is the lesson, my friend. Sometimes life hands us storm. Sometimes it hands us strangers. But every now and then, it hands us a chance to begin again. What would you choose if that chance came knocking on your door, if you are still here? I am glad this story kept you close. Tap like, tap subscribe, and let us keep riding together. Pour yourself another cup of tea, take a breath, and tell me, what time is it where you are, and where in the world are you listening from?